stars be with you.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Energetic Principles podcast for our final episode in the Saturn Neptune series. We are 8 episodes deep into this series, and I'm so excited to welcome back to the program. We have Catherine Urban here today. Thanks for joining me again,
Hello.
Catherine.
Thank you
Yay!
so much, Melissa. It's so wonderful to be here with you.
Oh my goodness. I love when Catherine's on the podcast. If you have, I'm sure many listeners out there know who Catherine is. But if you haven't, definitely go check out her work. She is, I remember years ago when I first came across you with a radiant astrology summit that we were doing, and we were looking for applicants. And I remember watching all the, going through all the applicants and watching Catherine's video. And I was like, she's a star. I'm like, she's great.
Oh,
And so, yes, you always stuck out to me. And yeah, so I'm excited to have you on the program. We're going to be talking about something to believe in, the resurgence of faith in times of uncertainty, which I think is a big topic that we haven't really gotten into with this Saturn Neptune piece, but this might be a little more on the Neptunian side. But I don't know, Saturn's in there. Jupiter's always speaking in this realm too. But before we get in there, Catherine, I've done you some lip service, but tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
thanks, Mel. Yeah, I'm Catherine Urban. I'm an astrologer with over 16 years of experience. I've been in a deep dive study with astrology because it's a continuous study for the last 16 years. But astrology found me before that. And currently, I am offering consultations. My focus is primarily on annual prediction. I really am captivated by solar returns, and that's kind of the bread and butter of my practice at this point. And I also do horary astrology. And I'm just continuously falling in love with this practice and the philosophy behind it and just the wonder of astrology. Like how does it work? Why does it work? Like how beautiful that we have this mechanism as our ally. And yeah, just always contemplating that piece of it.
Yeah. It doesn't ever cease to amaze me. Or us as
Yeah.
astrologers. You would think you'd be like, "Oh, yeah, that's just the," but there's excitement every time you see the synchronicity or you see everything lining up or a certain, aspect or, configuration comes into play, and then you look at it through just a slightly tilted lens, and then you see it in a new light that you haven't before, like, what things mean, but then when they come in a tangible, felt way, and then all of a sudden you just add like another layer to like your astrological encyclopedia of like personal experience. I feel like it's so, yeah, it never gets old.
It never does.
It never gets old. Thank goodness, because the stars are always, planets are always turning. It's funny being a horoscope writer because sometimes in that realm it does get old because it's like, oh, just the same old transit once again. But
Because there's a
so
rhythm. There's a rhythm.
there's a rhythm, but there are always discoveries that are wonderful. So, all right. Well, okay. So Saturn, Neptune. The impending Saturn Neptune, we're actually recording this hours away from the new moon in Scorpio, which is in a grand water trine configuration with Saturn and Neptune, who are currently retrograde in the tail end of Pisces and making a not exact, but a grand trine with Jupiter over there, retrograde in Cancer. And, Mercury retrograde has just gotten into Scorpio. Venus is in Scorpio. The moon's in Scorpio. So we're really tapping into these water vibes
Oh,
here
yes.
today.
Yes, we are.
Feeling the flow. Feeling the flow. So, one of the things I was talking about in my newsletter recently about this new moon was this idea of water and having to be in the flow right now. And you can't really like fight water. Like water is It's sort of like a, like a ninja or a Shaolin master where it's like, don't be the water, be one with the water and go with the flow. It's like you can't resist where the current is going right now. And we're gonna start this talk off on sort of this idea that a big part of the Saturn Neptune piece is that there's a lot of uncertainty that's going down in the world. That can ask us to activate our watery sides where we do have to trust and have faith and go with the flow of things. And so, Catherine, what can you tell me? Have you been seeing uncertainty? I mean, in your life, clients, you know,
100%. I feel like the Saturn Neptune alignment, even though it's been building for the last 3 years in Pisces, and we're going to continue to work with it for another 3 years in Aries, I feel like in the last maybe 6 months, it's like the number one thing that I'm talking about with people, because people are feeling stuck. That's the number one thing I'm hearing from people right now, is people feeling stuck. And a lot of that does have to do with what you described as uncertainty about the future. Like, how can you, like, if you're feeling uncertain about the future, you may be feeling paralyzed, like stuck, like I can't make decisions, or you have a lack of clarity about what comes next. And so that sense of feeling stuck, I largely attribute it to that Saturn Neptune. And then the other one is just generalized anxiety about the future. Many different people from many different backgrounds have many different reasons to be concerned about what's next, whether you're of a younger generation trying to start a future, whether you um, descend from immigrants and have family whose lives are safety are being compromised at this time. Many different people have many different reasons for this lack of certainty about what comes next, what's happening in this country, what's happening in other countries, what's going on. And so I always come back to, it's the Saturn Neptune. It's the erosion of the old order.
yeah. And I don't know if you have any Virgo in your chart, but
Oh, yes.
when there is no order, I always kind of make a joke with, especially people that, I mean, Virgo, but definitely Gemini. Gemini planets have the I've noticed, even with my own, like the most difficulty with uncertainty because there is no there the yearning to know or the yearning to have order or to and of course we can't go through life knowing everything. If we did, it'd
No.
probably be boring.
Right. Right.
But uncertainty and anxiety anxiety is born from uncertainty essentially. And then especially if you are someone who is very attuned to order or likes to think a lot about things, it's like what happens is, you swirl around in the possibilities, but because there is no, very uh, straightforward compass that is pointing one way or the other, or there's vagueness, which is very, to me, Neptunian, like
Yeah.
the life seems life seems vague, but it also seems spiritualized right now. And that in what I talked about actually recently with Spencer Michaud, when I was bringing up the idea of like Aries wanting us to take risks in life, or the potential there. And so it's interesting to live in this spiritual space that has this uncertainty, but maybe, hearts or emotions are pulling towards one direction or another, but the outside circumstances don't I don't want to say they don't support that, but it might not be as clear or as comfortable to maybe go with what the intuition or the inner self is saying. And then have the whole world sort of, I don't want to say the whole world's crumbling, but in many aspects, like it can feel that way for people. And so I don't know
Yeah.
where I'm going with that rant, but
Well, I think what I'm picking up on too is, yes, we have the Saturn Neptune conjunction, but layered on top of that is also we have the eclipses along the Virgo Pisces axis. So I think what you're tapping into here is something I hear a lot of people discussing this, is just this yearning to have some semblance of control or order. And like Virgo, as you were saying, wants to know the plan, wants to know the details. The nice thing about Virgo, though, is that it's a mutable sign. So it understands how to pivot. It understands, like, okay, like if that plan doesn't work, we can do this instead. So that's why Virgo tends to spin its wheels a lot, because until we know for sure what's going to happen, we're coming up with various backup plans to support those uncertainties. And then the eclipses in Pisces are kind of saying, hey, no matter how much you plan and prep and research and prepare, the universe can have its own plan. And no matter how much effort you put into trying to secure something or to know something, there's always that divine creativity of the unknown, right? And so I think what I notice a lot with Virgo, like with the eclipses along the axis, is that there's often a rebalancing where in some areas of our life, we may be asked to let go of needing to know the absolute outcome of everything. I think as astrologers, we may feel that a little bit. And then for some of us, it's like, okay, well, sometimes feeling helpless in a situation, the answer is doing something, Virgo. So we're trying to do something in some areas and let go in other areas, perhaps.
Yeah, I feel that 100%. I mean, I was born with this nodal axis, but reversed. So I'm in my reverse nodal period right now. And, I've had to learn a lot over time in my life that, I can't just float along or necessarily wish for the best or, things to happen. Not that it's wrong to do so, but, sometimes you got to put your back into it and work and have a plan and show up to like daily life and what it asks of you. And I've known a lot of people that have that are going through their, nodal return right now. People have been close in my life that have the Pisces North Node and the Virgo South Node. And there really is this deep relationship with like needing to control things and like learning to have the faith, learning to let go. I love what you said about like, the universe has its own divine creation, plan. And, it makes me think of that old saying of, tell God your plans and watch him laugh or something like that.
Right. Well, and I mean, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier when we just started our conversation, is that astrology is inherently humbling because, yeah, it's mercurial. We're translating the symbols of the planets and the planets being extensions of the Godhead. And, we're just interpreting that. And we are not, as astrologers, we're mercurial, we're the translators, we're not the sun, we're not all knowing. We can have a sense of what's going to happen, but we're continuously being humbled by the way a transit could show up. Like, and because you practice astrology doesn't mean that you can always avoid the impact of a transit. And so you might see that transit coming and you think it's going to show up one way, but get ready to be humbled / surprised at how it shows up a little different.
Absolutely. And it makes me think about like, and I mean, this could speak to the Virgo Pisces as well. And thinking about Mercury, Jupiter, and like, or Earth and water. And, there's one thing to intellectualize what it is that we think we know about a certain pairing or a certain sign or like how it's going to go down. But, and maybe you do get it right. Maybe you nail it, which most of the time,
Sometimes you do.
But even when you do,
be here.
But it's like intellectualizing what that thing is or those possibilities and actually embodying it and feeling it and going through the motion are like two separate things. Because sometimes, I mean, speaking as a Capricorn moon, I'm not going to say, I don't feel like I'm a negative person, but sometimes my mind goes to the dark side or my feelings go to the dark side. So I'll see something coming and I'll be like, oh my God, I got to brace myself for this. And I'll sometimes I'll work up, scenarios around it. And, I've had to learn to curb myself. And I don't think that that's what astrology is for. But sometimes we want to control, what's around us, or like astrology or no, like, especially if you're a melancholic person at all, you might be like, oh my, this is going to happen, or this is going to go wrong, or whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I find that when I'm actually getting there, it doesn't mean it's necessarily easy, but I will be making it far worse than it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to anticipate what's next. I mean, that's another thing I've been seeing a lot in my practice is people reaching out to me, even separate from consultations, and asking like, hey, what do you think is going to happen with this political situation? Or what do you think is going to happen with this economic situation? And, I think a lot of people in that anticipation of what's going to happen, they reach to astrologers for that sort of consolence of like, this is, yeah, like they want to hear like everything's going to ultimately be okay. And think about it. We do that when we check the weather. Like, I want to know, I want to be prepared. What kind of coat, what kind of jacket, what kind of shoes do I need today? And looking to astrology to understand, what does the general weather say about what happens next? It's a useful tool for us. It's an ally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're all just trying to feel our way through this, through this patch of uncertainty as Saturn, the order and the structure, and, like what is, and all, our systems and our leadership in this world, meets this dissolving, confusing, spiritualizing uncertainty of Neptune. And so to me, it brings up two words. It, trust is one, faith is another.
Mm-hmm.
And, you had brought up when we were, back and forth emails, kind of thinking about like, how do we have this trust? How do we have this faith? And where do we find that when we do have things like our systems and our leadership are just not providing the support or the consistency that we have been used to for actually quite a long period of time?
Yeah.
How do we and if our survival's threatened within it, it's like, how do we connect with that? And do you see ways of people connecting with it to
Yeah.
get
I
to that trust
mean,
and faith?
well, one of the most striking things for me is, as a millennial, I noticed growing up that a lot of millennials were like, yeah, I don't really want to go to church anymore. And there was a breaking away. And I did some research going into this, but I mean, graphs show that there's been a decline in people identifying as Christian as well as church attendance. But then something kind of wild happened around 2020, big surprise, where church attendance started to uptick again. And I saw this one graph and it described it from the different generations. And one of the biggest increases of church attendance was millennials. And Gen X saw a very big spike too. The boomers didn't dip that much to begin with, but they have also increased in church attendance. And it's been kind of surprising for me to see that more people who I grew up with are kind of gravitating back towards traditional religion, not just Christianity, but traditional religion. But it makes sense though, because when you look at 2020, no matter what your views on it are, I think we could all agree that this was a collective trauma. And how do we cope with that? There's a lot of ways. You see people in denial, you see people, and this is one example here of turning to faith in the unknown, because no one knew what was happening. So people started going back to church apparently in 2020.
That's very interesting to me because if I pull it back into our astrological lens, it immediately takes me to obviously a pile up in Capricorn, where
Yep.
Jupiter was in Capricorn there too, and we're coming back to this idea of like y- systems and order and something like congregation. We think about like I mean, essentially, organized religion is
Yeah.
is very old, very traditional in many respects. And here we had this pile up, and that actually 2020 was the year that we were experiencing the closing of this aspect, which was Saturn sextile Neptune.
Mm.
So it's interesting to think of like, um, a sextile being able to like work with something. Like here's Neptune over here in Pisces being like, look, there's faith and there's connection, because people weren't getting connection either,
Mhm.
like come on over to this congregation or this organization where you can feel like there is some sort of structure or yeah, just a way to find faith in life or to try uh
Like spiritual
it's
support.
always open. It's spiritual support and it's always open. That's the interesting
Yeah.
thing about organized religion for the most part is
Yeah.
that they're always looking for people. Like it's
Yeah.
not something that's closed off. Like it's
No.
always open.
People always know it's there. And I just found it fascinating because I feel like the 2010s, when Neptune entered Pisces, it created an environment where there's a lot more openness of spiritual seeking, like that mutability of Pisces, and like that there could be room for many different spiritualities. And, we saw the rise of astrology, we saw the rise of witchcraft, we saw the rise of tarot and astrological magic, and basically connecting with tutelary deities and, as extensions of the divine. And you know, then we see this, we see Saturn encroaching on Neptune, and we see people kind of leaving those spaces of, um, let's say like folk magic or witchcraft, astrology. You see people actually leaving that to go hold space more from like a traditional spiritual platform. And I was thinking a lot about that as like the third and ninth house axis, and how the third house is more of like your personal practice. If the ninth house is organized religion, this is the scripture, this is the word, this is how you practice, this is when you worship. It's great for people who like structure, I suppose. But the third house is more of like your personal connection, how you set up your own little altar in your backyard. You'll see like the Virgin Mary grotto in like people's front yards. I used to live right by an old Italian neighborhood, so you see that a lot over there. Or like the altar I have set up in my bedroom. And that's kind of a third house. It's my way, it's my personal connection. And I'm going to pull different stuff out of my little witchy box to do my various rituals my way. That's the third house. But for people who are wondering, where do I start? Or is this real? I think that's another big one, is wanting something that's real. And one of the ways that we affirm that something is real is when there's like hive mind around it. Um, like when people can affirm that, you get that group validation that something is real. So I think people are looking for something that, especially with the Saturn Neptune, this big question around like what's happening, what's real, what can I depend on? People are turning to more traditional practices, it seems.
When you're saying that, what's interesting is it brought up to me because if there are these issues of survival and the uncertainty in the world, it it can feel a lot more comforting to be part of a flock or
Mm-hmm.
part of the hive mind versus, having your own altar and just hoping for the best, praying to the goddess. I mean, I think about the third house and, being the
The
house of the
goddess,
goddess
yeah.
and then the ninth house being the house of God.
Yeah.
And essentially it has sort of that, I love that personal practice of the third house. And I mean, if I might be oversimplifying it, but sort of what I heard is the outside someone else's practice of the ninth house. Because essentially you're taking on someone else's practice if you're going into an organized religion thing, whether it's
True.
someone like right, in that place or someone 2000 years ago. This is someone else's practice versus how do I connect with the divine in my own, receptive goddess like way, feminine way versus this, maybe patriarchal or hierarchical, organized religion. And one's not better than the other per se. They're just different ways of practicing and
Sure.
connecting to what is, beyond us.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense because through if we are dealing with the uncertainty and survival issues, like it makes sense to be part of something bigger than yourself, which,
Yeah.
a lot of times, especially church and Christianity is there to hopefully, if they're really practicing like Jesus's message to support and help everybody that's there, like
Yeah.
the giving hand, like the
I
bread
l
lines essentially.
Yeah, I love what you said about community and the value of community, and that oftentimes, unless you're in like a real established cult, right? But like oftentimes, the traditional spiritual spaces are going, like you said earlier, the doors have always been open. And so there's like a lot of followers, let's say, and there's a lot of community, and many people find themselves at home in these types of communities.
Yeah. Well, and I was telling Catherine before we got on here, I was like, I never really I didn't grow up with religion. We never went to church. Probably didn't even know a whole lot about it, except maybe on a Saturday morning, I'd be switching cartoons and I'd see some, evangelical preacher, doing his thing on the TV. But I remember when I was around 11 years old, there was a family that lived next door to me that I had become friends with their 2 girls who were around my age. And I also, like any Capricorn moon would have, I had an older, female in her 30s who was like my mentor, and she was very religious too. And I started going to church on my own accord, and like, my mom wasn't going or anything. It was just me. I was tagging along to their church, and I was like, "Look at this." It's like, on Sunday, everybody's there together. There's, like, a Bible study. I loved school, basically, and then they'd eat afterwards. And I was like, this is great. It's like, opened me up to this whole connection of, people coming together, wearing their finest clothes on, their Sunday best. And I had taken it upon myself to be like, and it was a Southern Baptist church, if I do recall. It was definitely Baptist. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina at the time, so I'm just going to assume it was Southern Baptist. But yeah, I had made moves with the preacher there asking to be baptized. And I remember I went to his office. He called me into his office and we sat down and he asked me some questions about like why I wanted to do this. And I don't remember what I said. Maybe I just wanted to party and hang out with all the people, but whatever happened, he turned my baptism down. He said, not
Aw.
right now. Maybe I need to study more, or I feel like he told me that I needed to connect more with why it was that I wanted to do this.
Or because he knew you
And
were a witch.
like she's got red hair, she's a little fiery. I'm gonna go ahead and say we're taking a risk on this one. Um, but it was just enough for me not to be like, yeah, let me pursue this. Let me really question that inside me. I'm like, no, I'm not. This is very Uranus on the ascendant. Aquarius, 4th house. Oh, I'm not a part of this. I'm not being allowed. I'm essentially, to some extent, alienated from it because you'd think they'd want to baptize anybody. Like, get in here. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
But I feel like he was, um, for lack of better words, saving me.
How ironic.
How ironic. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I grew up going to church. I was baptized. I did my first communion. My grandma was very religious on my dad's side, and so I grew up doing that and going to Bible class once a week after school. And I grew to like hate it. As a child, I was really pious. I would like pray my rosary every night. I would talk to Jesus every night. I was a pious little girl. I loved going to church with my dad and sitting there with him. I really did always have like a spiritual connection in that way. But as I grew older and I began to just like question things and also just hated going, like I just wanted to sleep in. Um, yeah, that I kind of started to move away from it. But on my mom's side, my grandparents were Unitarian. So they went to a Unitarian church and it was fun. It was lighthearted. They would dress up in costumes one day, do a potluck another day, have different musicians come. So I would go with them there. And my grandfather, he is a very he's always been like a spiritual seeker of like many different faiths. And he actually told me that now that we're in the age of air, we should be baptizing with feathers. And he took a feather and baptized my daughter with it.
Oh my
I
God.
know. He's very special.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. The baptizing with, well, it took me straight to like Mott, or however we say,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you pass, is your heart as light as a feather?
Yes.
Being, oh my gosh, I love
Yeah.
that. I've
But
noticed that a lot with people that are grow up with religion. Not always, but clients that I've had that have shown up. Especially when they're Aries rising, I've noticed, and you get the Sagittarius component in the ninth. There's
yeah.
a real aversion to religion because the religion was so extreme or so part of their early upbringing. There's this breakaway,
Yeah.
freedom that needs to happen from it. So
Yeah,
it's
well, speaking of which, I mean, one of the reasons why the reason I stopped going to after school Bible study was because I was in sixth grade and I was asked to write a paper on why abortion was wrong. And I didn't even know what that was. And I came home and I asked my mom, and my mom's like, you know what? You don't need to go back. And I was like, oh, thank God. But that makes me think about what has happened in the United States as we have built up in the last few years to the Saturn Neptune conjunction, which is the overturning of Roe. And that's another place that I've seen religion start to gain more of a hold, more of an influence, traditional religion in the last few years because it's influencing politics in a greater way. Like there's been times, I mean, I'm almost 40 now, so like I remember other eras in my life where it seemed like things were getting a little bit more influenced by more like traditional spiritual mores. And we're seeing it here again. Like I feel like I saw it around 9/11, and I'm seeing it here again now where religion, traditional religion, is beginning to influence more of our rights. And we see this term coined, well, it was coined in the 70s, but Christofascism, that's a term that we're seeing a lot of right now. And it's basically this idea that my religion is better than your religion. And we use that in a way that exerts control and therefore very often going the opposite direction of core values. Like Christianity core values are really about loving your neighbor, feeding the poor. Like these are things that Jesus said over and over and over again in the Bible. But we see people sort of using that narrative to oppress and take away liberties, take away rights. And so that's this Christo-fascism term and what that means.
yeah, there's definitely been, and honestly, that's something that I don't want to say fear. It could be an apropos word, but about, this coming conjunction because it's happening at 0 degrees of Aries, and and it's ruled by Mars. And when I think about, because a lot of this political leaning, and not only with their morals and the bills they want to write up, and all the money that's being filtrated, especially in the political system here in America, is by evangelical faith, which is part of different sects of Protestantism. And I had to like look it up because I had to question myself. I was like, do I even know what evangelical means? And I did and didn't, but it had me thinking about the principle of Mars, because essentially folks that are evangelical it's all about the mission,
It's
right? It's about the
preaching. Yeah.
mission, about preaching,
Yep.
spreading the good news of salvation, like you
Yep.
will be saved.
An evangelist
And
preaches. Yeah.
exactly. So there's
Mhm.
so it's this sense of outward Martian, like that I am telling you this, and I am like pushing. I don't feel like it could be an invitation, but if you think about missionary work and you just think about just the idea is any mission is essentially Mars
Yeah,
activity. It's like you're
completely.
going somewhere, you have an agenda,
Mhm.
you're back in the day, missionary work we know could be very destructive to
Yeah.
the lands that they would come into. And so what you're bringing up
Mhm.
about this, having trying to control the systems and like seep their way into what I would personally think is like corrupt moral values or twisted moral values.
Right.
Like that's something to be, in my mind, concerned about. And it's like, how do you, yeah,
And there's always a spectrum of it, right? Like there's some people who are really genuine and do it from a heart-centered place, but I mean, in this history of the nation, you see missionaries who have historically forcibly converted people, like with the Native Americans, and you see it even in more subtle ways today, where they were trying to make it a law that we had to post the 10 commandments in public school classrooms, which is wild because the United States was founded with one of the ideals of the freedom of religion. It's like First Amendment, like the freedom to practice your religion. Like that's why colonists came to this land in the first place. So that was one of the ideals that this country was founded. And that's exactly what I'm talking about with Christo-fascism, is this idea of my religion is better than your religion. And it's important that more people like hear my good word.
yeah, my good word, right? It's very
Mhm.
Aries. This,
Yeah.
this is what I believe. This is what I am trying to create a box around and have order to.
Mhm.
And it's because you're right that it's a very gray area, because a lot of times people that have certain beliefs that I might not believe in, it's not like they're out to like get people. Like sometimes they really just, someone who's really a supporter of, no abortion is like, the goodness of my heart, I want every baby to have life. And, like I hear that argument, I suppose, but it's just, it's almost like you got to look at the gray area with where they're coming from, but you're asking them also to look at the gray area too, that it isn't, because sometimes it just gets so pigeonholed, when it comes to beliefs in faith. Because there's the grander faith of having faith in life in the universe to be able to, support or provide or to get us through darker times. And then there's, this more rigid definition of faith that is like faith in a particular thing or a particular structure, or particular way of doing things. And like you bring up the our country's founded on the essentially the freedom of religion.
Yeah.
But and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like freedom of religion in that context was like freedom of your version of Christianity,
Mhm.
more so than any other, faiths coming
Yeah,
in.
it
So
was.
yeah,
Yeah.
so which is so interesting that it's like there's so many like infighting of what it should be within that. But
Yeah. It's just fascinating to me too, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about Stoicism. So this is taking it back real far, but we know that Hellenistic astrology, one of the dominating thought paradigms of the time was Stoicism, like the acceptance of your fate. And that was part of the allure of having your horoscope drawn, is that you could have a deeper understanding of what your fate was. Well, enter Christianity, and Christianity started to at first, like, paganism and Christianity were coexisting, but then what was important for the Christians was that there was this idea that you could repent, or that you could turn to God and then your fate could change. And so that was why, when you get to William Lilly's era, that, yeah, Christian astrology, you could practice medical astrology, you could practice horary, but we are not delineating people's fate. Like, that part is unacceptable. But get a window inside the body to understand sickness, cool. But it's interesting because where we get to now with like where evangelicalism and really traditional sects of Christianity kind of behave from is this idea of it's God's will. Like having this strong sense of like, this is God's will, and that's why abortion is wrong. And it's just the full circle of it has me aghast, I guess.
yeah. Well, and it's hard because it's like, are these people acting from a place of faith in something higher that they believe in, or are they trying to play God themselves, essentially?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, and there a lot of times it's very hypocritical in a
Oh,
sense,
yeah.
because it's like, if everybody were to jump on the bandwagon of like being going along with the religion and then being saved, essentially, because that's sort of the irony of like these certain factions of Christianity, is like, you don't have to do anything, you just got to sign up. You're like, you sign up, you're good, kind of
Yeah.
thing. You're like, you don't have to go out there like 12 step it and make amends or anything like that. You just gotta show up, and then all of a sudden it's like this magic thing where you're saved.
Just join the
Um,
club.
just join the club. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of irony and hypocrisy in it to speak in the name of God, or their version of God, when really I think they're trying to control the fate of
And
the
then
world.
taking away food stamps from hungry people. Yep.
Jesus would
Gutting
not
gutting
approve.
agencies that help people, that help the needy and help support society and give people opportunities. Yeah. I mean, so what you have is sort of these mouthpieces that are preaching and quoting Jesus all the time, but then they're not behaving in true Christian ways. And so that's where this idea of like twisting the narrative to support a regime. And again, Christofascism.
Yeah. So Saturn, Neptune in Aries
Mm-hmm.
there. And as you pointed out earlier, we're gonna get gray area. Like, I'm not the person that is showing up to church on the weekend, but I think anybody who wants to do that, and it's part of their daily or their practice and who they are, and they find their heart is filled with this, then more power to them.
Yeah.
But then there's going to be these people that take advantage
Right.
of such systems, because there is money in that.
Oh, for
Anywhere that
sure.
people congregate and are like giving to something that is the collection is always passed around. It makes me think of have you seen the HBO show The Righteous Gemstones?
My husband watches it. Yeah.
I love that show. I have watched the whole thing, and it is hilarious. It is hilarious, but, if you watch that, there's just big money here. And so with anything, it just gets me back to this idea, especially a fallen Saturn and Aries, of, Saturnian aspects that are corrupt or falling, or have their own best interest, and it's not in the best interest of people. Like, power what's the absolute power always corrupts? Absolutely. Like it doesn't matter if you're Christian or you're not, or, what country you're from, like anybody that gets into this place of power can get delusional about what it is that they can and can't do, or if they can do
Yeah.
everything, and then other people become a victim of that agenda.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's another interesting manifestation of Saturn Neptune, is trying to sort of like hold this spiritual authority, combining those two things. And yeah, and then I would just like to connect the tendency for Saturn. We connect Saturn with to conserve, to constrict. And so conservativeness and what's attractive, Neptune. We also see it showing up with the trad wife. The trad wife coming back into vogue. But again, it's a way of trying to control in a way. And it's at the same time, it's on one hand, an attempt to control women. But at the same time, I think it's also attractive it's mostly attractive to younger people. So people who like don't really remember this time at all. Like you see a lot of Gen Z people trying to be trad wives. And I think part of it is the yearning for a time where it seemed like life was simpler. So like the trad wife came out in the 1950s, which was around the time that we had a Saturn Neptune conjunction in 1953. And it was basically during World War I and World War II, women were in the workforce. And then the guys came back from war and wanted their jobs back. So they created this image of the trad wife to put women at home. But what happened is that then you start hearing about things like Mother's Little Helper, like women needing anxiety pills and starting to like drink a lot because they were just bored and stuck at home and saddled with all these other tasks like unpaid labor. But I think the yearning part of that is that the image of the trad wife, the privilege to stay home, the privilege to bake from scratch and have a child hanging on each ankle at your feet. Like, certainly that might sound beautiful to someone who's trying to escape grind culture, or someone who isn't sure if they're going to be able to afford to buy a home. You know what I mean? So if someone's like, hey, come, I want you to not work and be home, some people might be like, okay. But anyways, we see that archetype making a serious comeback. I think it's Saturn Neptune.
That's a great point. That's a great point. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you especially when you're younger, because you don't have the context of like what had happened before, and sort of the, how women were, suppressed or like stuck into the box of like what, because I mean, from the outside, if you've never really experienced that and you're like, wait, I get to stay home and just be like, watch TV when I want and like clean up here and there. And then I don't have to worry about going out in this economy to like, bust my ass trying to find yeah, that I can see how that would be appealing.
I mean, that sounds great, but also financial independence, that also sounds great.
That is true. You're gonna want that when you're, if something goes awry and and the trad wife doesn't look so good anymore, and then
Right.
because that's a lot of people that were stuck in those situations because women didn't have the rights to. They couldn't get credit lines. They would, they had to rely on men for so much. And it becomes its own like cage and its own trap. And so,
Well,
not that grind culture isn't its own trap to some extent too, but glamorizing it. I mean, that's a very Neptunian word, is glamorizing something.
right. And to be a stay-at-home mom, like maybe that's wonderful and that works great, but what you have layered with that is a lot of the things that are coming out in the so-called manosphere, which are degrading women, and younger men are growing up listening to these influencers in the manosphere, which are telling them like how to be a man. And yeah, like there's a lot of degradation narratives that are being shared. And that's part of, and that kind of clicks into this whole trad wife thing too, which is why it is kind of a problem right now.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. So we got to talk to our young men. We got to talk to our young men and teach them how to be good people and how to respect. And we got to talk to our girls and teach them how to be confident and take no shit. That's how we move through.
I know everybody, been seeing the, hashtags for however long, like the dying patriarchy and, last gasp of patriarchy. And then like aspects like this come around and I'm like, is it the last gasp? Or I'd like to think so, but
I mean, we know that there was like a fourth wave of feminism in the last decade, and that this is the response of that.
Yeah.
This is the bark back.
Well, I do like that you're bringing up this connection of like teach your youngins, be aware of what is shaping them, because when I was talking on the second episode I did with Tasha Begg, and we were talking about popular culture and Saturn and Aries, and what I noticed in the 20th century was that Saturn and Aries always corresponded with really robust youth movements and teenage movements, and them shaping culture in some way, shape, or form. A lot of times it has to do more with musically and art and entertainment and things like that. But as you're bringing up here, it's like, okay, well, what ideas, are getting in the heads of these young ones, and that they're the future, right? So being aware of, and I mean, we don't have control over that either. That's the thing too. It's like we can't shape people to be who they're going to be. But if you do have a young one out there, I know Catherine has a couple youngins. They're still pretty young though. But even the best, I mean, doesn't matter how young they are. It's good to like,
Yeah. But something else I was thinking about. So as I was preparing for this episode, this chat with you, I was watching South Park with my husband, and I mean, they have a new season out, and I hadn't watched South Park in a long time because it got like weird for a minute, but I'm like, oh my God, they brought back Jesus. Like early South Park. Yeah. Like early South Park episodes, Jesus was like a regular character, and then they phased him out, but like he's back. And then you had PC Principal during like the fourth wave of feminism. PC Principal came in and was like aggressively feminist and aggressively progressive and inclusive. And then with the new season, he changed to Power Christian Principal. So I was like, oh my God, it's so reflective of the times.
Yeah, that's well, it's funny. In that same episode, I was talking with Tasha, we were talking about how South Park was born with Saturn and Aries, and it's going through its Saturn return basically right now. So I love that you bring that up, because it has always been like a straight up commentary on the ridiculousness that is the world. And the humor is hilarious. So I love that they brought Jesus back. Jesus was a big character in the beginning of the oh my gosh, I used to love South Park when I was younger. Oh my goodness. So getting to this Aries energy, it makes me wonder, because if we like step into the future, it makes me wonder if because Aries is the start of the zodiac, or these new beginnings, or this, thrust of agenda, a fresh agenda. And it makes me wonder if you might see new religions or new sects of religion breaking away here, or if we'd have, a rise in missionary work in some way, shape, or form, or even like a religious leader being born. Because I know the last time we had a Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries in specific, it was in the early 1700s in 1703.
Yeah.
And that's when John Wesley, who was the founder of Methodism, which is a very popular sect of Protestantism, I'm saying that right, Protestant, was born. So what do you think? Do you think we're gonna see any of this?
I'm pretty sure too, when King Henry VIII created the Church of England, this was also a Neptune in Aries moment. It was Pluto in
Oh,
Aquarius and Neptune in Aries at the same time. And we have that. And there was a breaking away from Rome, basically, a breaking away from the Pope to create his own church, the Church of England, and it was Protestant. So that's where you had all these religious wars of Catholics versus Protestants, people beheading each other and trying to control the nation's practicing faith.
well, what's interesting about that was the Methodism was a breaking away of the Church of England and the Anglican. So we're breaking off. We're
We're
breaking off.
breaking away. Actually, there was some other breakaways that I saw with Neptune and Aries too. There was the Great Schism. There's two Great Schisms.
Yeah.
There was the Great Schism of the papacy for the East and the West. So you got like the Byzantine, and then you got the Holy Roman empires. And then there was also another Great Schism within that Western religious empire. There was like a pope in France, and then there was like the Roman Pope, and there was another Great Schism. So we see it's interesting because when you think about Aries as like all for one for all, Neptune is kind of diminishing that. Like, are we one anymore? And so you do see these controversies and great divisions. I mean, talk about the American Civil War too. So yeah, division, could totally see that. Absolutely with Saturn, Neptune. But it can also bring people together. Like we saw the fall of the Berlin Wall the last time Saturn and Neptune aligned in Capricorn, and that unified Germany again. So yeah, it's interesting because astrology is inherently paradoxical. And I saw both in my research. I saw great schisms and divides, but also kind of people kind of melding back together as well. So yeah.
It makes it sound like to me it's like there's a purpose for both, because part of it is, okay, well, we have to go rogue. We're going rogue here in this direction. That does have that newness or that, birth of something or the separating of something. And then there are the people that come along with it. Like, so maybe there's a strong, with anything that happens, usually there's a strong leadership force. Like people don't get together because everybody's like, let's just go over here. Like someone's like organizing something or has an agenda or this is what we're going to do. And then the flock comes. With anything, whether it's religion or not, there is that leadership follower / supporter relationship that goes in there. So yeah, I would especially given what we're seeing here, because right, like what you had brought up of like the schisms is that there is some sort of like power structure that is going on that people do not want to be a part of anymore, right?
That is it. That's exactly it, I think, Mel, because Saturn, when we think about Saturn as order and how it is fallen in Aries, it's like there's a lack of faith in the system. There's a lack of faith in leadership. And I think that we can expect to see lots of falls from graces with Saturn and Aries with Neptune. Plenty of them. We're probably witnessing one in slow motion right now, hopefully. And also, but also this lack of trust in leadership. But we're gonna put our faith into them because we like the sound of it, like Mamdani's win.
Yeah.
Someone who's young, someone who doesn't have the traditional sort of resume. And I think he is an emblem of Saturn in Aries. And also the hope that he's bringing to it. I think when Saturn was in Pisces, it was hard to feel that hope because Saturn is just heavy. And so Pisces likes to cycle up and down, and Saturn was kind of just depressing everything. So it was hard to get up. It was hard to find that hope, the humor, the bright side. But now that Saturn has dipped into Aries, I think we're starting to see that upswing because his victory reassured a lot of people who are feeling. Another Saturn Neptune thing is oligarchy, and a lot of the resources being in the hand of fewer people, and that giving more people less certainty about their ability to provide for themselves. So by Mamdani getting elected, that reassured a lot of people who called New York home that, oh, I'm going to continue to be able to afford to live here. But I think he's totally Saturn in Aries, totally.
Yeah. Well, as you're speaking, it makes me think of like, here's something fresh, here's something new, here's something that seemingly is not part of the system, that is broken or isn't working for me or failing me in some way. And so I'm going to latch my hope and my faith around this freshness,
Yeah.
and we don't know how that's going to pan out, but like I've looked at his chart,
Well,
and
let's
the
see.
man's got some things coming out. Definitely is going to be challenged, but
Yeah.
I love that you bring that up, because that's essentially what's happening here. Is it's a new sense of authority. It gives hope for something that is not the broken system.
Yeah.
And it excites people. You think about Aries energy is like, we want to feel excited. We want to feel alive. We want to like get into the fray.
Yeah.
Um,
And the other
yeah.
thing about it too is with Jupiter and Saturn having just recently aligned in Aquarius, that, we can expect more leaders to sort of not fit that traditional mold. Aquarius being
Mhm.
the outsider, someone who was rejected, as you were kind of bringing in earlier, that archetype. And so Saturn and Aries being like fresh leadership, someone who comes in with a different plan. And lots of people are going to criticize them and sort of create this atmosphere of like, can we trust them? But to your point, a lot of people saying, well, I can't trust those other guys either. So what do we got to lose?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a chance, it's very Aries. I'm gonna take a risk. I'm gonna take a chance on
Yeah.
what, and it makes sense, like right now it's for everybody in their life, whether we're, politics aside, it's like we are in a time of spring. We are in a time of newness. We have all these outer planet cycles that are at the beginning of things, and like this waxing energy, and it's fresh. It's time to go with what is fresh.
Yeah.
And anything that's not fresh is going to claw every single, like it's things. What is rooted and what has power and what has money does not die easily. So,
Mm.
we have to be. Maybe that's part of the Aries. Is like, you got to fight back. You got to be vigilant. You got to be. You can't be complacent. You got to sort of be, I feel like most of the time with Aries or Mars energy, where you stand. Like, it's like kind of, you got to know where you stand. Okay. So before we wrap up here, let's talk about, let's put Christianity and politics aside, and just think about like the benefit of having faith right now at this time in our lives, and our own spiritual practice, because we are in this great time of change. And so, I mean, do you have any, I mean, it's very personal, of course, what a spiritual practice looks like, but especially since we're in this modern age that is so, that can disconnect us so much from that spiritual aspect. Do you have any thoughts or, recommendations or suggestions or
Yeah.
observations?
Again, like I think it's just personal to everyone. Like I know I'm kind of experiencing this Saturn Neptune is like, where is my spiritual practice right now? Because yeah, I do have two little kids and I don't have like the most free time. I can't just set up all these elections and the kids are like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So I'm also in my own process of trying to figure out, what does it look like to create a semi-regular rhythm of devotion in my life. And for me, it looks like getting outside and being in nature. For me, it looks like connecting with friends one-on-one, not just online. Like I love being online. I love the community that we have, connecting with astrologers, connecting with people who love astrology. I love that. But also just, I think connecting with friends, close friends, being with family, it's really meaningful. and trying to meditate. For me, it's trying to meditate periodically and just going into that stillness where I feel like at my core connected to something bigger than me. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's trying to connect with something bigger than you in whatever way that you feel that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because it's true. Like you got a lot of things asking for your time. You got a lot of people asking for your time, and especially when you're in this midlife. I mean, you're almost midlife, but I mean, it can feel like that. Like I feel like midlife starts at like 35, to be honest. There's a life like cloys at you in many different directions, and so how do you fit it in? And when you were speaking, it dawned on me, like when you're like, oh, just go outside, or like have this moment of meditation. And it's so Aries. I like to joke about with Aries, you got to like pick the low hanging fruit. So what is that 5 minute thing you can do where you're just like stop and you have a moment of breath and like gratitude for what has happened in this day thus far. Like I've been
Yeah.
connecting a lot with gratitude recently because I feel like I got enough Capricorn Virgo placements and Cancer too that sometimes I get stuck in the weeds of like, oh, I need this, or I haven't done that yet, or that's not perfect, and honestly, I'm kind of like sick of like being in that mindset. And I am now, when I catch myself, I like pull back, take a breath, and I'm like, hold on, focus on the gratitude. Switch the mind to
Yeah.
what is going right. Switch the mind to something that made me feel like alive and really good and excited.
Yeah.
And that takes like seriously 1 minute of your time, and it will shift your whole connection to, how you're relating to life or how I'm relating to life, because it's my experience. But it also connects me with something like that's greater because it's all these synchronicities or the, experiences that have led to that moment of what excites me and I'm grateful for. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also as you're talking, I'm thinking too about how, yeah, Saturn and Neptune are going down in Aries, and Aries being Mars ruled, and Mars saying, what are you going to do? How are you going to take action? And I think in this era, we do have to show up for one another. We do. We have to be there during each other's times of need. And
very
maybe
fitting.
and maybe yeah, and maybe we can't do that for the entire world, but we can do that for the people within arm's reach.
I love that, especially since the conjunction is going to happen with Mars in Aquarius. So
Yeah.
there's like this Mars Saturn generosity that will be going on. Some malefic generosity, but maybe
Yeah.
that means we show up and we do the thing, we do the hard work, we're
Do the hard thing.
dedicated, like we're because to show up in the community and like do your part, and like especially when things aren't going well or it requires extra work, like those aren't Venus Jupiter things, right?
No,
Like
but it's high, it's likely that it's more rewarding, I
yes, that's
think.
a yeah.
Yeah.
It's can be yeah. Speaking as a Mars Saturn square native,
Yeah.
it's like the reward does come through like putting your back into it, just
Yeah.
going, dealing with the obstacle, dealing with the hard stuff. But when you do, it's like, I did that. I helped that. We
Yes.
did that together. Look at what we've made. Look at what, there's a lot to it. So I love that
Completely.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right, Catherine. Well, I feel like we meandered a couple different places, and I loved the whole talk. It was very thought provoking to me. Just feeling that Aries
Likewise.
energy rise. I'm inspired. Um, I'm inspired. I'm angry. I'm I'm
All the things
motivated.
in Aries.
Yeah, all the things. All right. Well, before we go here, where can people find you? What do you got going on?
Yeah, you can find me at catherineurban.com. That's where I have all my offerings and where I sometimes post things that I write. Again, my hands are pretty full right now. And you can also find me at Astro Catherine on YouTube, on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. I deleted my ex account.
Oh, You did it.
Yeah, I did it. So that's where you can find me. And as far as things going on right now, I did just drop a new offering. I've
Mm.
been having a lot of people request that I look at their newborns chart.
Oh,
And
very Aries.
yep. So I do newborn readings now where this offering is ideal for parents who are um, astrologers or astrology enthusiasts or know enough to be dangerous when they're looking at their newborn's chart and they just want a little bit of hand holding while they look at that. So that's my latest offering. And I'm so honored to offer that.
Yeah, that is a I feel like you're the right person for that. Like I would never. I'm not your person for that. But because looking at a newborn's chart it's slippery,
Yeah,
especially with a new parent that is expectant and like if ideas are planted in, we have to be really careful with any youth chart, not just a newborn, like any
totally.
young person's chart, because they're growing, they're finding themselves. And as we talked about earlier, like the astrology always it's so variable of how things can go, but there's totally key patterns that can be picked out that are like no brainers to like help you really understand your child, understand this new person that doesn't have a voice, like I see the value in that. And luckily it's, you're so aware and intuitive and caring that I feel like you're the perfect person for that. So if anybody
Aw,
has a
thank
newborn
you.
or a young one, Catherine Jergal there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, where can you find me? You can find me at energeticprinciples.com. You can also find me at tarotofher.com, where we are wrapping up our Kickstarter. This is airing on the last day of our Kickstarter for the
Ooh,
second edition of Tarot of Her. This is the first edition, so let
so
me entice you
pretty.
with what will be. Yeah, so if you are interested in the deck, let's see.
Let's see it.
Let's get a Saturn and Neptune. A card I get. Oh, interesting. I've got the 10 of leaves in the new moon position, which is,
Wow.
yeah. So this, to me, this is about like conclusion and wrapping up like pain cycles. It's like being like eclipsed into a new dawn, so to speak.
Wow.
And it's like a new moon of that.
So
So,
pretty. It,
um,
it feels very
okay.
fitting for our conversation. Like they're coming out of a hole, like they're coming out of a
I know
tub.
they're literally coming out of like they're on this rock, stabbed by my camera's not helping, stabbed by a million things. But on the other side of the portal, they're totally fresh. There's not a single wound. The sun is shining. It's a
It's a
new moon.
portal. It's a rebirth.
It's a rebirth.
But we're going through
Absolutely.
the labor pains right now,
We're going
perhaps.
through the labor pains for sure. And I'm going through the labor pains of this second edition in our expansion pack because this is also something that's birthing into the world. But we're
Yeah.
so grateful for the support. We are funded right now, so it will happen no matter what. But if you want to support, you still can. And if the campaign ends, there's going to be late pledges for a while for just a few dollars more. So you can still get one. And we got greeting cards and postcards. And I made a 2026 wall calendar with like lunar cycles that you can buy on our Tarot of Her website. So there's lots of different ways to support this woman-run business by myself and Sarah Jane Lambert. We're just out here grassrootsing it, and doing our thing, being creatives in the world. It takes guts, it takes courage.
It does.
Yeah,
It
but
does.
luckily we have been supported, so we're very grateful. But yeah, all right. Well, so if you like this conversation, you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel for more. Go watch some of the other episodes. I mean, all 8 episodes have been fantastic in my mind. So check that out. And if you're watching, or excuse me, listening on the podcast style, you can leave a review wherever you listen to this, and it helps the podcast be seen in the algorithm more. Because it's a tough world out there, people. It's
Yeah.
a tough world. You got to claw your way through the algorithm.
Saturn and Aries style.
Yeah. But I always feel the people that will find me are the right people to find me. So that's all that matters. So, And all right, lastly, share with a friend. We talked about community, like share what share the podcast, share the Tarot of Her deck, share with a new mama who has a newborn that likes astrology. Catherine does
Spread the
readings.
word.
Yeah, just spread the word. I feel like that's a way that we can really just, keep the good vibes up and lift up our community, is just like really like just supporting each other in like the smallest way possible. Just a mention of something can be like a support for the person who's offering a service and the person who receives it.
Totally.
So there is that. But all right. Well, Catherine, it was such a pleasure having you as my final guest on this series. Dare I say, save the best for last?
Oh,
Mm.
Mel, I always love collaborating with you. I love your insights and I love the way that your mind works. And I love your technical approach and heart-centered approach to astrology. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, right back at you. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to us in this conversation here today and in this series as a total. We wish you the best with Saturn and Neptune vibes that are coming our way in February of 2026. So take care out there, support each other, and yeah, live your best life. And as always, may the stars be with you.